Okay, hi guys. Workout was paused, so don't panic. Gonna get going in just under 3 minutes, but yeah, just a quick heads up. We'll be turning over again this session. You don't necessarily need a climb this time for the sprint. Just a pretty flat road. You know, we are moving into the next phase of training, which is going to be race related. So actually, you know, more of a undulating course actually probably be quite helpful, because you're going to have to try and produce this power on whatever topography you're met with. But yeah, just get yourself ready. Just a little over 2 minutes till we start the workout. But we've got basically 3 sets of 5 sprints, 4 times 20 seconds, and then a longer 30-second effort at the end of each block. So 5 sprints in total and 3 blocks. Hope that makes sense. Okay. In the chat, I'm going to be talking about aerobic capacity and aerobic fitness. It's going to complete off the series as well. We talked about during the CP testing. We talked about different energy systems and stuff like that. We talked about VO2 max last week, and the final sort of theory related discussion. Just going to talk about aerobic capacity and aerobic fitness, because it's now increasingly important as we build towards the season, whether that's triathlon, road racing, gravel, whatever your poison, the hard work. Well, we've already been working very hard, but the sort of the race focus starts from here basically. This is kind of like a transition into the really sort of race type stuff. This next big session in particular, where we're working off a high baseline. This is more about repeatability tonight. Anyway, we'll get into nitty gritty in just under a minute. So just get yourself ready. 50 seconds and I'll be starting the workout. Okay. Get yourself ready, 30 seconds to go, then we'll start. Okay, 20. Right then, ready to go in 10. Okay, starting workout in 3, 2, 1. Off we go then. Okay. So let's have a quick run through of the workout, then I'll get stuck straight into our discussion, because quite aggressive warm up to get you ready for those sprints. But basically we've got the 10-minute build as normal. We then got 5 sort of rev ups, 10 seconds on, 10 seconds off. Then we've got a ramp building up to a 15-second nudge. 3 minutes of sort of easy riding before we get into the first sprint set. And as I say, it's 5 sprints in each block, 4 20-second and 1 30-second sprint, and 3 of those blocks. Okay, each block is broken up by 8 minutes of recovery. Okay, so I would just, to be honest with you, I get erg mode off now, like using it less and less. Did notice that GCN and GTN did a piece recently about erg mode and how it's not all it's cracked up to be, almost as if they're watching my sessions and they're just a bit behind the curve. Anyway, yeah, it's just funny. I've had the feeling for a long time now, and it's just quite interesting to see it's something that you have felt for like quite passionately for a while be reflected in something somewhere like that. Not going to be that sort of smug person though, but I am, I suppose, privately educated little smug boy anyway. But yeah, anyway, so let's get stuck into our chat, because we don't have a ton of time. We're going to talk to you about aerobic capacity and aerobic fitness. So your aerobic capacity we've covered. It's basically your VO2, but it also encompasses things like cardiovascular delivery, so your heart and blood vessels, and how efficiently they deliver oxygen and fuel around your system. So takes into account things like your actual heart size, the sort of your ventricles and atrium size, stroke volume, how much like blood you can push around with one beat. You know, cardiac output, which is your heart rate times your stroke volume, and then capillary density in muscles, how well fed your muscles are by capillaries. You know, they're the smallest vessel feeding into your organs. Muscular utilization. So once the blood's got there, how well your muscles use the oxygen that's provided. So that's things like mitochondrial density, those little power plants that convert ATP into energy, oxidative enzymes, muscle fiber type, so your fast twitch, slow twitch, and then other thing your aerobic capacity takes into account is your metabolic efficiency. So just how efficient the chemical reactions are in your body, basically. Okay, your ability to burn fat as opposed to carbohydrates. When working aerobically, how efficient you are at that, and minimizing your reliance on anaerobic metabolism, because as you know, you've got your aerobic system and your anaerobic systems, they're all working at the same time, but how much you lean on one depends on how well developed the systems are proportionately. So all these factors together determine how hard you can work without rapidly accumulating fatigue, basically. So lactate and hydrogen ions. So yeah, that's aerobic capacity. So I just wanted to clear that one up. Yeah, it's basically your VO2 plus all the other developments in your body. Now, aerobic fitness is effectively how good you are at using that capacity, that big old aerobic fuel tank. And it's obviously pretty bloody key in cycling. So it allows you to ride longer, harder for longer, today's fatigue, but crucially for this period, this phase of training, the reason we're now starting to lift your base, your long weekend rides, adding in perhaps zone 2 work in the middle of your week, is that base fitness, that aerobic fitness, helps you recover faster between efforts. So this session very much kind of will elucidate that, will kind of emphasize that, how good you are at recovering between them. Because what I didn't mention earlier was you got these 5 sprints, you got 1 minute 40 in between, so still reasonably healthy recovery, but not like the recovery we've been having recently where 3-5 minutes of wonderful relaxing recovery. We're building fatigue in your legs and working on repeatability now. Okay, so yeah, recovering faster between efforts. That's why the aerobic base is starting to become increasingly important. Also, of course, so that you have the engine to complete whatever event you're doing. So yeah, faster recovery between efforts. Being able to use oxygen more efficiently means you can clear out lactate more efficiently. You can replenish those anaerobic fuel tanks more quickly. That phosphocreatine system, lactic acid system, yeah, it reduces the time between attacks. Recovery between attacks. And I don't think I need to dwell on that one. That's just such an obvious one as to why that might be helpful. Improved fatigue resistance. So improve your ability to sustain high efforts before fatigue kind of really kicks in. So what that means is particularly lower intensity, sub-threshold intensities, increasing your ability to oxidize fat for energy and to spare carbohydrate. Just reducing mental fatigue as well. Stabilizing your heart rate, keeping that heart rate to power ratio more consistent, under that 5% drift, if you remember when we talked about cardiac drift. And so, this is why in long endurance events, those with bigger bases who might not have the biggest aerobic capacity, might have the biggest VO2, but they've got a really good base, can recover quickly, quite often, you know, you can, the fitter riders, so to speak, aerobically fitter riders, beat the real monsters. Because in a race, it's not just about how much you produce, it's how often, how quickly you can recover, etc. So yeah, it's about efficiency. You know, less oxygen required at a given power, same for your breathing and heart rate. But also like base endurance, aerobic fitness helps to improve technique, pedaling technique, neuromuscular patterns. So one of the downsides of doing lots of high torque, high powered efforts is it can have quite a negative impact on your cadence. So this aerobic stuff will start to just get you back to better habits. And having that aerobic fitness, that base fitness, yeah, just allows you a higher platform to perform high intensity efforts off, which is what we're about in this next phase. You know, if your sweet spot is higher because your aerobic fitness is higher, you know, that means like your baseline level is going to be higher overall. And so when you accelerate your sprint off, it's off a higher baseline. That, you know, that just means you're better, you're faster, you're stronger. And this is all why we've done the top end stuff. We want to get you inherently strong. So in race scenarios, you can really punch. But now, we need to work on that base fitness and fatigue resistance. So, how are we going to do that? Long steady rides, of course. Now, a lot of chat at the moment about what zone 2 is and how the pros don't train to like specific zone 2. It's because it's an arbitrary concept, as is a lot of this stuff. And I mentioned earlier about smugness. There's one guy in particular who's doing the rounds at the moment about how zone 2 is nonsense. It's just like, he's not saying anything new. Everybody who's well educated in this stuff knows that anything sub-threshold, anything underneath your FTP is all aerobic. It's basically all one training zone. But we break it up into like zone 1, 2, into zone 2, zone 3 to help, because it helps you practice for certain scenarios. So, for instance, if you're doing a tap to talk like James is, you know, you're going to be riding at a tempo level and maybe a low sweet spot level. You know, it helps us kind of maintain discipline. Right, so here comes the first 10 seconds on. So just sort of 10 pedal strokes to say. And relax. That was a lot more than 10 pedal strokes, wasn't it? We'll just finish off my chat in a second. Next per. 3, 2, 1. Time to turn on the fan. Okay, 2 down, 3 to go. Ready for the next one? Here we go. Relax. Oh, okay. 2. Last one. Three, 2, and relax. Now we've got this quick ramp set. Starting up about 65% FTP, up to a 15-second nudge. So whilst you're going through this, I'm just going to carry on my chat. So we talked about long, steady rides, and we use zone 2 as an arbitrary kind of target to keep disciplined. And really for me it comes down to about managing load, balancing load. So yeah, anything under FTP is all one training zone. But the higher you are within that, the more fatigue you're accruing. So having a really steady level within zone 2, where you do long, easy rides, means that then we can be more balanced with how we train the rest of the week. Just makes it simpler, rather than everything being a mishmash of everything. You be clear in your head, like tick that box, tick that box. Okay, so that's why we do long and steady. Okay, next minute, coming up to tempo, which is the other way we train aerobic fitness. So for tempo efforts, you know, that's the long climbs in the Alps, but also that's kind of like your lowest baseline level in a crit or a road race. Yeah, your average power afterwards, or your normalized power will be somewhere around tempo and sweet spot, because that's where you're kind of coming down to and accelerating off, etc. And so tempo type workouts are important, particularly coming into race season, particularly longer tempo workouts, because they are an opportunity to practice fueling and hydration with a slightly higher heart rate. Because whilst zone 2 is arbitrary, all sub-threshold, that's a big range of heart rate. So yeah, you need to practice within that sub-threshold effort. As you go out to threshold now, you got to practice fueling and hydrating with those varying heart rates. And then here we are, threshold training, your maximal kind of sustainable type power. It's about kind of helping to push that envelope alongside VO2 max training of that aerobic capacity, the aerobic ceiling. Then this last effort, high intensity effort, 15 seconds. Improve your inherent strength, and all of it below lifts up. Last few seconds. Okay, relax. So that's how you train your aerobic fitness. The long steady rides, the tempo and sweet spot work, threshold work, VO2 work, and high intensity efforts. Believe it or not, all of that helps with aerobic fitness, just in different ways. But hopefully made some of that clear, and why it suddenly matters now. We've done the strength stuff. Now we need to build in the base, the repeatability, fatigue resistance, your ability to recover between efforts. That last point is what we're just checking in on today. Right, let's get focused. We've got 2 minutes, just over 2 minutes, and then we start sprints. We've got 4 times 20 seconds, finishing off with a 5th rep at 30 seconds. So tighten up shoes, yourself ready, don't overthink it, just go hard. Not necessarily looking for peak powers, but we are looking for a very hard sustained effort over each of the 20 and 30 second efforts. Seconds. So don't worry too much about hitting a peak number. We're just going to go for it. Okay? So amazing if you checked your peak powers, but it's probably only its first rep where it'll matter. Keep an eye on the peak powers now, but we're not necessarily approaching each session obsessively. So relax, erg mode off, remember. I've got it in fixed mode, but you can put it in terrain mode. So that's a little bit more race scenario specific. But yeah, switch off the brain. Let's get ready to do some hard work with erg mode off. 5 seconds. We'll go for the first rep. Just imagine the scenario. Okay. Let's pretend I'm doing a little crit or something. Just give it lots of accelerations, kicking out corners, little accelerations up, little lips, etc., etc. ready to start. 10 seconds, race mode. Let's get ready. 5 seconds. 3, 2, 1. Here we go. First effort, don't think, just go. Imagine you're chasing down a wheel. 10 seconds. 3, 2, 1. So one sort of technique point as we are into race mode. You're unlikely to be out of the saddle for the full 20 minutes. So with each one, just take 5 or 10 pedal strokes out the saddle to get it going, and then sit down. Because we need you practicing, kind of, as I say, corners, getting tucked, juicing this effort. So depending on how you race, practice being down on the drops, practice being tucked in. All this matters now. We're less obsessed about the peak numbers. We're more obsessed with doing this scenario specific efforts. And try and roll through in between. Just keep the legs going. Try and get roughly to recovery target. Okay, so it should be, I think, about 55% FTP, something like that. Yeah, 55% of FTP. Hopefully that first effort was fine, but it will creep up on you, particularly when we get to that third block. Ready to go for the next one. 3, 2, 1, here we go. So 5, 10 pedal strokes out, saddle to get it going. Then sit down, tuck in, and drive. 10 seconds. 3, 2, and 1. Team. Not easy, not too much. Keep the cadence going. Keep it above 70. Bring back up above 80. So keep the power on a little bit. Not total recovery. Go for round 3. I really like these types of sessions, particularly when there's less recovery in between, because it just allows you to switch off the brain and just go for it. Seconds. Get ready to go again. 3, 2, 1. Here we go. Drive it. Come on. Ten. 5, 3, 2, and 1. Relax. Spin up. Not too easy. Yeah, kind of like, again, you would in a race. Sit up, maybe pull back through the pack a little bit. You don't want to drop out of the back, so you have to get back on it. Get into someone's wheel. Or if you're, say, a triathlete or something, how the hell does this apply to me? I can tell you, bloody well does. If anyone's raced at Eastern Dorney, the best kind of example I can give, when as you're coming back towards transition, you go on to the next lap, there's that little kick over the bridge, and quite often you'll have other races or other people who are behind you joining the circuit, and you don't want to get stuck behind them, you don't want to get away from people, and so every lap you're kicking over that bridge to a certain extent. You know, there's dead turns in races, all kinds of stuff. So yeah, you might not be doing it in such a concentrated fashion or such an explosive fashion, but this stuff matters. Let's go in 3, 2, 1, here we go. Okay, final 20 seconder. Ten seconds. 5, 3, 2, and 1. Relax and spin up. Deep breath. Bring the power back on. Right, one more. This time a 30-second sprint, and then we've got a ton of recovery. Nice. Just under a minute. We'll go for the final effort in this block. Seconds. Go for the final time. Here we go. And it's 30 this time. Okay, 20. Get tucked in, lift the chin, shoulders down, go for it. 10, 5, 3, 2, and 1. Woo. Well done, guys. Spin up. You take it a little bit easier. Get your breath back properly before we start to bring legs back online. You see the recovery time is a touch higher, so it's about 60% of FTP. Okay, so once you've got your breath back, let's start working our way back up to that. Alright, so you don't cafe legs. You want to be able to go again on the next one. So that heart rate, you want to keep it maybe in the 110s to 120s. Okay. Obviously that would vary if you have a particularly high heart rate, but most of us are sort of in the 150 to 160 mark in terms of our threshold heart rate. It was naturally higher heart rate. So yeah, a few beats onto that. Yeah, keeping it going. And just as we cruise for the next 6 minutes or so, it's a quick little recap of what we talked about, because I was trying to condense it and get it done at the beginning, because I know a lot of you guys, well not a lot, some of you guys don't necessarily want to listen to me for a full hour. So I try and make sure I get the chat done right at the beginning, so if people want to switch me off and listen to music, they can. But it does mean it's quite a compressed chat, and I'm sort of firing stuff at you. So just a little recap. So just remember, talk about aerobic fitness rather than aerobic capacity. Your aerobic capacity is that ceiling before you shift entirely anaerobic, and that's basically your VO2 max. Once you go beyond your VO2 max power, you're then into the anaerobic territories. So that's your aerobic capacity. It also takes into account things like how well developed your heart is, how great the capillary density is around your muscles to feed them, ventricle size, mitochondrial density within the muscles, the muscle fiber types, and then just like your ability to burn fat and kind of be stubborn to start to burn carbohydrate, because the more you conserve those carbs, the longer you'll be able to do the hard stuff for. So that's your aerobic capacity. Your aerobic fitness is basically how well you use and how well you protect that aerobic capacity, that aerobic fuel tank. That's aerobic fitness. Okay? Helps you lie longer, today's fatigue, but most importantly for today's session, helps you recover faster. So, if you struggle to recover between those sprints, or maybe in the next round or two you really struggle to recover between sprints, that's a clear indicator that you need to improve your aerobic fitness. Okay? And then also it helps with fatigue resistance, so not developing that fatigue in the first place. You get better at clearing it out, but also you get better at holding on. You get more efficient, and that's technique wise, that's holding your form, that's keeping yourself tucked, it's keeping your chin up, it's core strength, core conditioning, those sorts of things. They're developed by your lower intensity training. And it allows you to hold a higher baseline, so that when things do kick off, you're able to hold that higher baseline easier. So, classic example is in the crit. The first 20 minutes, when if you're already dying before those accelerators out the corners and stuff, that's aerobic fitness that you need to improve. Okay? Obviously, you need to improve that kick so you can close down gaps quicker and stuff. But that recovery, that ability to hold a higher baseline, aerobic fitness. And how do we achieve that? The long steady rides is part of it, but then it's the higher heart rate, tempo and sweet spot training, particularly if we're doing like long climbs and things like that. Your threshold training, your sort of time trial efforts, your VO2 max training, and your high intensity training. So it's everything basically, all helps with the aerobic fitness. But obviously kind of where you start to put your time changes. So we focus on the high intensity stuff. Now we're going to start to focus on the low intensity, the recovering between efforts, the VO2 max training. Got that strength. Now we want to build that foundation underneath it. Okay, that's what we're about. Right, we've got a couple of minutes till we go again. And I would say it's in this next block really where you start to get an insight into where your aerobic fitness is. Another kind of indication is start looking, if you've got a power meter and you're wearing a heart rate, you should always wear a heart rate monitor, just FYI, But if you've got power and heart rate and onset, on your long weekend rides, start to have a look at your power to heart rate ratio, your cardiac drift, good fitness levels for like a 3-hour ride, 3-hour plus ride, less than a 5% drift, basically, okay? Doesn't always mean you're unfit, by the way. If that cardiac drift creeps up, it could mean that you're fatigued, could mean that you're carrying a bug. So just think about context around it as well. But yeah, power to heart rate ratio on your long rides afterwards. And your normalized power is that zone 2. Talk very briefly about zone 2 training. Yes, everyone's getting all excited about, oh, zone 2 training is arbitrary. It always has been. But it's about balancing your load across the week, particularly for an amateur rider. So in this instance, who gives a shit what the pros are doing? Amateurs who got to juggle everything else. And that means just kind of forcing riders to be a bit more sensible weekend. Anyway, right, let's focus again. Make sure the heart rate and power are near the recovery targets. 30 seconds and we kick off again. Second block, starting in 3, 2, 1, here we go. Come on, we're on 10, saddle, and then sit down and drive it, tuck in, and drive. Chin up. 10, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Spin up, get your breath, and bring the power back on. About 55% of FTP. Round 2. Seconds. And see. Get ready to go, 10 seconds. Three, 2, 1, round 2, come on. Tuck in, drive it. 10, 5 seconds. 1. Catch your breath, bring the power back on. It's 2 down. 2 more, 20 seconders. Try and bring the cadence back above 80. Use your gearing. 1 minute, and we go again. seconds. Let's go in 5, 3, 2, 1. Kick. Come on, 10 seconds. 10 pedal strokes. And then drive. 10. 5, 3, 2. One more 20-seconder. Already, not far off finishing the second block. That's the other reason why I like these kind of condensed blocks. It just feels like you get through it quicker. Less time for the mind to drift. Which I think is important to me. Right now, last night was a rough. I think I covered the chat alright, but apologies. Didn't come across that well or that clear. Rain is not what it was 3 days ago, so 30 seconds. Hopefully though, I wrote these notes through like 3-4 days ago, so I can't blame the notes. Alright, 20 seconds, and then we hit the last 20 second. You're close to finishing this block, guys, and then a big chunk of recovery. So stay strong, 10 seconds. Four, 3, 2, 1. Here we go. Ten. 5, 3, 2, 1. Excellent work, guys. One last 30-second effort. And a big chunk of recovery. Excellent stuff, guys. Finding these sets hard, this might not be your bread and butter. It does get easier. We've got plenty of workouts like this, so you will get to a point where you find these types of sessions a little bit sadistically enjoyable. So don't panic. Just finding this stuff, the recovery routine sets hard. Just think about how your competence improving on these sets will help you when it comes to race or whatever event. Even if you're hitting a big sortie or Grand Fondo, how much better you'll be able to recover than your mates when they haven't done this sort of stuff and they haven't recovered properly, and then they have to get another climb or another kicker. So all applicable. Ready to go. 2, 1. Here we go. Come on. 30 seconds. 20. Tuck in. Race mode. Have to be able to reduce this power whilst you're aeroing. 5, 3, 2, 1. Well done. Just chill. Just relax, get the fluids back on board. 2/3 through the session. It's got 5 short sprints and then you're done. Okay. So, one thing I just wanted to cover very briefly in this little chat, just like how aerobic fitness, we talked about aerobic capacity, you know, how the measurements for VO2 max, you know, your 5-minute power, your sort of 3 to 8 minute power, that's your VO2 max sort of region. Your FTP, that denotes the start of the slippery slope towards anaerobic. You know, you can no longer buffer the build-up of lactate and hydrogen ions. So that's the first sort of the start of the slope, and then your VO2 max is the cliff edge. Okay, that VO2 max, that dropping off point, that's your aerobic capacity. Everything underneath it, aerobic fitness. Okay, and just like some things to think about when you're working on your aerobic fitness. Definitely, if you don't know your threshold heart rate, find it out. Today's a Friday, I'm recording this, so message me on the Monday. But message me if you don't know, like, it's in Training Peaks, you know, you get to know Training Peaks better. That's something, I'm not going to go on about this, just going to make a very brief point, but it's something I've noticed of late, is that people's familiarity with Training Peaks and looking at their numbers isn't as good as I would like it. Okay, so I want you getting to look at your analytics after a session. You don't have to plow through it and agonize over it for hours, but just 5 minutes after a session or in the evening, just having a quick look. And it's not, when you're looking at your numbers, I think, you know, people expect a coach, when they look at your numbers, to have like some big like salient point to make, and it's not. Being a coach, a lot of it is tracking patterns. Okay, I think that's perhaps something a lot of people don't necessarily appreciate, and it should be the same for you. Just having a quick look. Okay, average heart rate for that was so and so. Oh, I was very close to my threshold heart rate or that tempo or sweet spot effort. You know, little things like that. You know, just helps you look after yourself. But when you're looking at aerobic training in particular, I mentioned earlier that power to heart rate ratio, that cardiac drift. So what that means is basically, as you get fatigued or you get to the end of your range of fitness, your heart rate rises with the same power output. Okay, so you're working harder in order to maintain the same power. And you want to keep that ratio under 5%. That indicates a good fitness level as you're kind of building the volume. So as your rise go from 3 hours, 3:15, 3:30, 4, 5, 6 hours, whatever it is, we want to be kind of staying within 5% drift. And your average heart rate should very much be within kind of sub-threshold zone 2 area. And another thing to look at is your normalized power. So normalized power, what it is it strips out any freewheeling when you're not pedaling, strips out any topography, and gives you an average power for that ride, stripping out all the noise basically. So what it means is that you can compare 2-3 hour rides, for example. They might be on very different terrain, but you can compare how well you've executed that session. So say your 65% of FTP for you is 200 watts. Just use that as a round number. You do a hilly ride one weekend, a much flatter ride the next weekend. You know, that 65% of FTP is 200 watts. We want your normalized power to be somewhere around 200 watts for those 2 rides. Okay? Just helps you compare between rides. So if you're riding in the club and smashing each hill the first weekend, and then the second weekend you're riding on your own, probably going to be very different normalized powers and very different power to heart rate ratios. And it's okay to kind of have fun, like it's not, but what that does mean is you're upsetting the balance with the rest of your training. Anyway, I'm not going into that because that's a chat for another time, probably more of a chat with individuals. But I just want you looking at this stuff. The long, easy stuff, the aerobic stuff matters as well in terms of the analytics. Get comfortable looking at this, okay? Because it's important. Because it shouldn't just be me looking at your numbers and tracking patterns. I want you guys to do it as well. Okay, and then just one thing that also really impacts what those numbers reveal is how well hydrated, fueled and hydrated. So we talked at length about fueling and hydrated long events. But one thing you will notice, say again, we take those two different rides. You know, if you've gone a bit nuts on the first 3 hour ride, the week 4, and you're not fueled and hydrated well, that will have a big impact on your overall heart rate, your normalized power, and your cardiac drift. Okay, as opposed to if you're riding on your own and you've got time to think about it. You know, another factor into that isn't just your fitness, it's how well you're looking after yourself on the ride. Okay, this isn't me saying don't ride with people. Okay, it's all about kind of finding a compromise. But I guess if you're trying to accumulate volume and each week you're smashing it with the club, it's going to be hard. You're going to get overwhelmed at some point. It's almost inevitable, I'm afraid. So it just comes to a point sometimes where you have to make somewhat hard decisions about what your priorities are. Anyway, right, so we're coming up to the final block now, 35 seconds. Let's get focused. Last little focus block. Okay, so let's finish this off. After the session, make sure you compare your numbers between sets. Aerobic fitness is good, then your numbers, the sprint numbers should be relatively consistent throughout the 3 sets. There it is, going 3, 2, 1, here we go. Ten seconds. 5, 3, 2, and 1. Relax. Get your breath back. Power back on. Okay, 3 more 20-second efforts. You're so close now, guys. Stay focused. Seconds. Just rolling through. Let's see about next 3 efforts. Basically, 10 seconds, get yourself ready. Two, 1. Here we go. Ten. 5, 3, 2, 1. Yes. 2 down. 2 to go. 3 to go. 2, 20 seconds. Well done. 1 minute and go for round 3. We're so close now. Remember to keep that power on. My mind drifted there. Stay focused. Get that back to that recovery target. Or close to it at least. Ten seconds. And sprint and then tuck in. 2, 1. Here we go. Tuck. 10 seconds. 3, 2, 1. Excellent stuff, guys. Excellent stuff. Focus back, getting up to power, try and bring your cadence back up, above 80. You're doing a really good job. Just got 1 more 20-second sprint, then we're into the end game. To admit my enthusiasm for the sprints is starting to wane. It's very much these last few, they really get you. Stay focused, because these last ones really, that's kind of like that's the testing of that aerobic capacity, testing your ability to recover your fatigue resistance. It's these ones where kind of like the polish comes from, you know. Your best. We're less obsessed with numbers, we're more obsessed with effort. Seconds. Here we go, come on. Ten. 5 seconds. Tuck in. 3, 2, 1. Yes. Come on, guys. Okay, breath back, then switch back on, back up to the recovery target. Got 1 more effort. 30 seconds. I know I kind of drone on about this, but this section is just a classic example of how erg mode is unhelpful. Because there's no way with each of these efforts you are hitting kind of 150 plus percent of FTP. We want consistency, but that target is arbitrary. So if you're having technical issues and erg mode's on and you can't get it off or whatever, don't stress. you're still very much hitting your anaerobic systems, okay? But you probably have a much better time of it if it's off, because it will limit you. It will limit you, and then potentially as you come down the other side and the fatigue kicks in, the target then might be too high. Okay? And really what we want is to hit the system with effort. Okay, anyway, here we go, last effort then. Come on, big 30 seconds guys, come on. Everything you got now, finish it off. This is the last sprint. It's the final sprint for the finish line now. You've gone long. You've gone at say 300 meters rather than 200. 10 seconds. Hold it. 5, 4, 3, 2. Well done. That's right. Release the shoes. Sit up. Easy gear. Just spin up. Till you got your breath back. Just chill. Well done, guys. Don't worry, I'm gonna get back into the chat again. Just kind of leave you be, but I want to very quickly talk you through next week's session, because next week is kind of like the stereotypical session for this second phase of the winter, where we have got a normal sort of warm up with kind of little accelerations, etc. And then basically it's a very back-ended session, so it's not until like 20 minutes in really where it really kicks off. But what we're doing is you've got about, what is it, you've got basically like a 20-minute section, which is the whole workout. So it's just a 20-minute section where your baseline throughout that 20 minutes is sweet spot, so 90% of FTP. So you basically got a 20-minute sweet spot effort, but every 2.5 minutes you're accelerating with an anaerobic burst for 30 seconds. Okay? And actually next week you can perform it with erg mode on if you want. I would be. Because again, we're less concerned about peaks. It's more about just kind of accelerating, shifting into the anaerobic system for a little burst, for being sub-threshold, and trying to recover higher than you would like baseline. Because what we're particularly keen on is that maintaining that high baseline. We're not so worried about what the power numbers are on the sprint, on the anaerobic efforts, but we want to maintain that underlying baseline. So next week's session, I will, of course, I'll say this in the session, you can have erg mode on for that. It's actually a good erg mode session, but you don't have to. I won't. Yeah, very much like the stereotypical race prep phase. Okay, just a couple of minutes now. Just spin up the legs, watch the heart rate dwindle, get it back below about 100 beats per minute. Just chill. Oh, I have to turn the fan off, getting cold. Well done, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed that. 90 seconds. Down through, you would have built up a lot of lactate in the old legs, so got a slightly longer cool down. And just remember, feel free to take a longer cool down if you need it. Got that sort of number of 100 beats per minute that we're trying to get below again. Safe and absolutely if I don't stress. Take time. But yeah, hydrate, protein, recover, stretch. Okay, well done guys. Now you know what you're in for. It gets easier. Comes a sadistic pain. But this is the, particularly if you're a bike racer, you know, it's this stuff that kind of gives you the confidence that the other guy will break before you. You know, particularly in crits and things like that, mountain biking. You know, this is the stuff where you know, like, oh yeah, I've got more in me. I did, you know what, like 15 of these efforts the other day. I've got them still in me. So this guy's going to break before me. You know, it's that sort of mentality. Just gives you confidence. And likewise, you know, triathletes who are doing it, you know, when it's like quite often, particularly in a really busy race, trading places with somebody, you know, you have to accelerate to get past them. You know, and keep the acceleration, keep them under pressure so they bugger off and leave you alone so you can hold a consistent effort. You know, it's all that sort of nonsense as well. Anyway, there you go guys. Really well done. Hope you enjoyed that and I will see you next time.